Worry has a sneaky way of pretending it's helpful. It tells you you're being responsible, that you're staying ahead, that you're just being careful. But underneath the surface, it's just fear. Fear rehearsing for a future that hasn't even happened, probably never will. It's honestly wild how much energy we spend mentally solving problems that don't exist. You know the drill. Replaying imaginary conversations, bracing for disasters, preparing for confrontations that are 100% fiction. You lie awake at night, staring at the ceiling, building worst-case scenarios like it's your part-time job. And you call it being prepared. But here's the thing. Worry doesn't prepare you. It paralyzes you. It puts your entire system on high alert, even when there's no real threat around. You're not becoming more ready, more calm, or more capable. You're just draining yourself. And when you step back, even for a breath, you start to see it. How much mental bandwidth has been eaten alive by thoughts that didn't belong there? How many hours were stolen by situations that only ever existed in your head? Then comes the moment of clarity. The stuff you worried about last month, half of it never happened. And the stuff that did happen, you handled it. Not because you spiraled in advance, but because you showed up when it was time. Worry didn't carry you, your presence did. And here's the part that might surprise you. When you stop worrying, you don't become reckless. You become focused. You stop leaking energy to every possible what if, and you start showing up for what is. That's when everything begins to shift. Not because life suddenly becomes easy or perfect, but because you stop living in a future that's made entirely of fear. The heaviness lifts. You loosen your grip. You breathe again. Not because everything is figured out, but because you finally realize you don't have to suffer your way through life to feel safe. When that shift happens, when worry loses its grip, it's like alignment starts happening on its own. You see more clearly. You feel more available. You're not constantly in a fight with the moment. Most people don't realize it, but worry is just your brain trying to feel useful when it's afraid. It's like a malfunctioning survival mechanism, constantly scanning for danger, trying to predict every possible way things could fall apart, as if thinking about them hard enough will somehow stop them from happening. But that's the lie. Worry feels like control, like planning, like preparing, but all it really does is spin you in place, mentally running laps around a version of the future you haven't even met yet. And while you're busy doing that, while you're consumed with what if, life is quietly unfolding right in front of you. You miss the moment. Opportunities pass you by. Peace slips through your fingers. Not because it wasn't there, but because worry blinded you to it. The real shift comes when you stop asking, what if everything goes wrong? And start asking, what if I'll be okay, even if it does? That question changes everything. Because real confidence isn't built by avoiding discomfort. It's built by moving through it, one grounded breath at a time. It's knowing you can meet chaos without falling apart. That you can face uncertainty without needing to control all of it. That you don't need all the answers in advance. You just need to be present enough to hear them when they arrive. When you stop feeding your worry, you stop needing to predict the path. You start trusting your capacity to respond, instead of panic. You trust that whatever shows up, you'll show up to. Not perfectly, not with some flawless master plan, but with clarity, presence, and enough calm to actually move through it. That's when life starts to feel different. Not easier, just lighter. Conversations feel clearer. Decisions feel less tangled. Even mistakes don't sting as hard, because you're not interpreting every little slip-up as proof that you're falling apart. You stop reacting out of fear and start acting from peace. And people around you, they feel it. Your energy shifts. You're no longer broadcasting stress in your voice, your eyes, your posture. You slow down, but move with precision. You speak less, but with more weight. You stop needing to control everything, because now you are the kind of person who doesn't need to. And that changes things. Not because you're forcing the world to cooperate, but because you've stopped fighting it with fear. Now, this next part might sting a little. A lot of the problems you think you have aren't actually problems. They're stories that worry told you. You're not overwhelmed by your life. You're overwhelmed by your interpretation of it. by the meaning you've assigned, by the future you've already written in your head that hasn't even happened yet. Worry turns small moments into monsters. A message left unread becomes proof someone's upset. A quiet day becomes evidence you're not doing enough. One bump in the road, and suddenly the whole week feels like a disaster. But what if you didn't add meaning? What if you didn't jump to conclusions? What if you let things just be, without immediately labeling them as personal, negative, or permanent? That's where things start to simplify. Not because you're in more control, but because you've stopped coloring everything with fear. One of the most freeing things you can do is stop narrating your life with worry. You don't have to constantly analyze, forecast, or overplan. In fact, some of the most grounded people you'll ever meet, they seem weirdly calm in chaos. Not because they've mastered life, but because they've stopped letting their minds write horror stories about every unknown. They know the truth. Worry is just the mind trying to write a script it was never meant to direct. And ironically, when you stop obsessing about what might happen, you finally have space to focus on what is. That's where the real alignment begins. You handle things as they come, not as you feared they would be. You make clearer decisions because fear isn't fogging your brain. You take better care of your body because you're no longer drained by the noise. You show up to your relationships because you're not stuck in loops of doubt, guilt, and imaginary disasters. Worry lives in futures that don't exist. Peace lives in the now. And once you start feeling that peace, even just for a few seconds, you realize something important. Nothing outside of you had to change. You changed, and the world began responding to that. There's a kind of quiet superpower most people never realize they have. It's the ability to let things be unresolved, to not chase closure, to not demand immediate answers, to move forward without knowing everything. Because here's the truth. Life isn't a scripted movie. It unfolds in layers, in unexpected moments, in the spaces between plans. And sometimes the wisest thing you can do is simply wait. Wait without spiraling. Wait without assigning meaning to every pause, every silence, every unknown. It's not easy, especially when your mind has been trained to fill every gap with panic, to grab control the second anything feels uncertain. But the moment you begin noticing that habit, that reflex to fix, to predict, to make things make sense right now, you gain the power to pause and question it. Ask yourself, why am I rushing? What am I afraid will happen if I don't have all the answers yet? Who told me that peace only comes after everything is figured out? That's the illusion worry sells you. That peace is some reward you earn once life behaves itself. But that's a trap. Because if you're always waiting for everything to be perfect before you breathe, you'll be holding your breath for the rest of your life. Real peace doesn't come from getting control. It comes from releasing your emotional attachment to needing it. It's the decision to be present, even when the path is unclear. To sit with life, even when it's unfinished, unpolished, unresolved, and not let it pull you off center. That's when something amazing starts to happen. You reclaim your energy. You reconnect with your clarity. You get access to your creativity again. Life begins to flow, not because your circumstances changed, but because you finally stopped swimming against everything. Things might still look chaotic on the outside, but inside, you're grounded. You're steady. You're not desperate for answers anymore. You're open to possibilities. And here's the kicker. That's often when things start working out. Not because you forced them to, but because you stopped getting in your own way. The shift isn't magic. It's internal. You feel less reactive, more intentional, less fogged by fear, more connected to what actually matters. But to get there, you have to notice something most people never do. Your mind isn't supposed to be this busy. We've normalized the chaos in our heads. We treat the constant mental noise like background music that never stops, like it's just part of being human. But here's the reality. A noisy mind isn't a strong mind. It's a mind stuck in survival mode. We've mistaken anxiety for ambition, restlessness for productivity, overthinking for responsibility, and we believe deep down that if we're not constantly doing, something must be wrong. But here's the problem. Overthinking doesn't mean you're evolving. It usually means your nervous system is stuck in overdrive, replaying old fears, dressed up as new ones, running disaster drills in your mind that do nothing but exhaust you. Worry tricks you into believing you're engaged in life, but really, you're just watching it from the sidelines, micromanaging every potential outcome. While the actual moment quietly passes you by, you don't really see the sunset because your mind's reviewing your to-do list. You don't really hear someone talking because your brain's already planning your response. You're in the room, but not really in the moment. And here's where the shift begins. Not through force, but through awareness. You start catching yourself mid-worry. And instead of spiraling, you breathe. You remind yourself, this isn't happening right now. This is just a story my mind is writing, and I can close the chapter whenever I choose. That's when you begin returning to your body. You feel your feet on the ground. You notice the way your breath moves. You feel your chest release, just a little, when you stop feeding the panic. You come back, not as a character in a survival story, but as the author, the one choosing what comes next. And you realize something profound. You can't worry your way into a peaceful future, but you can choose peace right now, not as a finish line, but as a practice. And the more you make that choice, the stronger the muscle becomes. It gets easier to return to yourself, no matter how loud the world gets. Now here's one of the most overlooked truths about worry. It's addictive, not because it feels good, but because it gives you the illusion of control. It keeps your mind busy, gives you something to fixate on, something to manage, as if the act of worrying itself is a form of protection. But it's not. Most of the time, worry is just distraction, dressed as responsibility. And that distraction has a cost. It quietly robs you of joy, not in dramatic ways, but in subtle ones. You're laughing, but your mind is still halfway stuck in a fear loop. You're on a walk, but still mentally scanning for what might go wrong. You're trying to rest, but worry's whispering what if in the background. Without even realizing it, you've built your inner world around preparing for storms that may never come. But here's the good news. You can catch the spiral. And when you do, when you pause instead of feeding it, you start retraining your system. You begin showing your body what safety feels like without needing everything to be perfect. Because safety isn't some far-off destination. It's not something you find when life finally cooperates. It's something you create when you stop treating uncertainty like danger. You don't need all the answers. You just need to stop believing every thought is a fact. Not every fear is true. Not every possibility deserves your peace. This doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you start caring more wisely. You treat your energy like it's sacred, because it is. You protect your focus like it's limited, because it is. You stop giving the loudest thought in your head all your attention now, and start listening for the quiet one, the one that whispers. You don't have to know yet. You're safe here, right now. And when you start living from that space, your intuition gets louder. You begin sensing what's right, without needing to analyze it to death. You move, without waiting for perfect timing or approval. You let go of pressure and start trusting timing. The world won't always slow down, but you can. And in that stillness, you find strength. Not the kind that needs to shout, but the kind that stands unshaken. You know what's rare these days? A mind that's quiet. Not because everything is perfect, but because it's no longer at war with itself. That kind of peace doesn't come from fixing every part of your life. It comes from something deeper. Learning to stop adding weight where it doesn't belong. Because here's what most of us miss. So much of what makes life feel heavy isn't even ours. It's the assumptions we carry, the stories we were taught, the fake emergencies our brain invents, the invisible standards we never agreed to, but still feel like we have to meet. And all of that? It can go. You don't have to solve every problem before you exhale. You don't have to anticipate every outcome before you allow yourself to rest. You just have to notice. When your mind is trying to pull you into fear, and choose not to follow it. Not every thought deserves your trust. Not every signal is a sign. You get to decide which mental paths are worth walking. And worry? Worry is rarely one of them. This isn't about becoming passive. It's not about pretending nothing matters. It's about choosing wisely, knowing when to act and when to let go. It's about walking through life open, not armored, present, not panicked. Because here's what happens when your energy shifts. Life responds to you differently. People feel it. You feel it. And no, it's not some mystical law of attraction thing. It's just that you're finally showing up as you. Not a future version. Not an overcorrected, overanalyzed, overprepared version. Just you. The version that trusts. Whatever comes next, you'll meet it. Not with fear, but with presence. And maybe, just maybe, things start to go well. Not because life suddenly got easier, but because you stopped making it harder than it had to be. You stepped out of your own way. You stopped gripping so tight. You let go of the idea that control equals safety and realized that peace lives in allowing. And from that place, you begin to live, not survive, not manage, not cope. Live. You laugh with your whole body again. You rest without guilt. You listen more deeply. You love more openly. You move more clearly. You make decisions that don't come from panic. You show up in relationships not as someone begging for reassurance, but as someone who already feels whole. You stop monitoring every room you walk into. You stop filtering yourself for every opinion. You stop predicting disaster every time something good happens. Because now, your peace doesn't depend on the outside. It comes from knowing. Even if things fall apart, you won't. You trust your response more than you fear the outcome. And that changes everything. You start honoring your own rhythm. You notice when your nervous system is begging for quiet. And instead of pushing through, you pause. You don't wait until burnout to rest. You don't wait until anxiety explodes to check in with yourself. You do it now, often, gently, and you begin to notice the small miracles, the kind that hide in ordinary days, the kind that only reveal themselves when you're actually there to witness them. You're not skipping through life anymore. You're walking it, one grounded step at a time, no longer trying to be everywhere, no longer preparing for 1,000 things that may never happen, no longer turning your mind into a war room. Now, you're building a home inside yourself, a place that isn't ruled by fear, a place where stillness isn't just allowed, it's welcome. And it's from that place that you live, that you lead, that you love. Here's what's wild. When you live this way, people notice. They feel the difference in your tone, your timing, your presence. You don't need to say much. You don't need to prove anything. You don't even need to explain your piece. You just are. And that kind of presence? It's contagious. It reminds people what's possible. Not because you have it all figured out, but because you finally stopped fighting what you can't control and started focusing on what you can. You can choose awareness. You can choose stillness. You can choose not to follow every thought that shows up screaming. You can choose peace again and again. Not forever. Not perfectly. Just right now. Because peace isn't a final destination. It's a decision you keep making. A muscle you keep building. A place you keep returning to. And every time you choose it, even in small moments, you get better at finding your way back. So maybe today, that looks like not answering that message right away, not trying to fix that thing immediately, not rehearsing tomorrow's conversation before it even exists. Maybe it looks like taking one breath, then another, not because the storm is over, but because you don't have to become it. Let the world swirl. Let the noise rise. Let the unknown stay unknown. You're grounded. You're home. You're here. If this message resonated with something inside you, drop a comment and let me know what part landed the most. And if you're on this journey of untangling worry and choosing peace, hit that like button and subscribe. Not just for the algorithm, but for yourself. So you can keep showing up to the kind of content that brings you back to you. You're not here to worry your way through life. You're here to live it. Let's keep doing that, together.